This is called the unintelligibility defense of Einstein. Many people have looked at Einstein's relativity and found it to be unintelligible. This unintelligibility has then been used as a defense to Einstein's relativity. If we go down, that is utterly crazy and leads us sane people who realise Einstein's relativity is nonsense to despair that there are so many people willing to believe in nonsense and effectively believe in that nonsense on faith precisely because it is nonsense. So what I'm going to refer to is Einstein is Icon by John D. Barrow. I'm going to refer to who John D. Barrow is. I'm going to go on to Michael Fowler, refer to who he is, and to an article he's written, More Relativity, the Train and the Twins. Okay, and then I'm going to go on to my conclusion. So if I go on to that, that's that bit. So first of all, John D. Barrow. John D. Barrow is shown here on Wikipedia as he's a English cosmologist, theoretical physicist, mathematician and so forth, professor of mathematics at the University of Cambridge, and the article which he's got online is here as Einstein is Icon. If we go through it. Scientific celebrity has a relativity all of its own. Some scientists are celebrated by their peers, some are treasured by their students, while others are lionised by the public at large. But very few are given the burden of being a celebrity to everyone, everywhere, all the time. Albert Einstein achieved that universality. Publicists must despair that he did so in the pre-television era without an agent or the help of a public relations company. He didn't even have a website. More striking still, I doubt that more than a handful of readers have ever seen a colour photograph or a film of Einstein, and even fewer know what his voice sounded like. Yet his face has become an icon for wisdom, imagination, creativity and concentrated mental power. His brand name so pervasively a pseudonym for genius that even he once had to confess, I am no Einstein. So there's Einstein, and he's been portrayed as a super mega genius, and even he has to admit he doesn't stand up to that sort of publicity or being such a mega genius. Right. There have always been scientific celebrities. Isaac Newton was the ornament of his age. People talked about him, made fun of him, and even devised Newtonian models of government and morals. But Newton never became an icon. Instead, he remained severe and aloof. In the 19th century, Charles Darwin became, with Thomas Huxley's assistance, a reluctant public intellectual. Although he kept to the wings, his ideas were centre stage in long-running controversies about science and religion, the origins of humankind, and our relationship to the hairier members of the animal kingdom. In retrospect, what is interesting about Darwin's work is that at some popular level it was too well known. People thought they could understand what he was saying. Indeed, that was the problem. They understood too well. Now Einstein's going to do the opposite. He's going to be unintelligible. Darwin you could be understood. Einstein restored faith in the unintelligibility of science. So he's not being understood. Everyone knew what Einstein had done something important in 1905 and again in 1915, but almost nobody could tell you exactly what it was. And I've got a video here going into it. So I was like getting so many videos now. And 3. And this one here, it remains unanswered what Einstein's relativity is. You've got people discussing Einstein's relativity and they're still not sure what it is. That's how bad it is. So you're getting back. So it is still in that sense unintelligible. When Einstein was interviewed for a Dutch newspaper in 1921, he attributed his mass appeal to the mystery of his work for the ordinary person. Does it make a silly impression on me here and yonder about my theories of which they cannot understand a word? I think it is funny and also interesting to observe. I'm sure that is the mystery of non-understanding that appeals to them, it impresses them. It has the colour and the appeal of the mysterious. And so Einstein's relativity, when it was introduced, it was mysterious because it was unintelligible. If we go on, it goes into more detail about it. Relativity was a fashionable notion. It promised to sweep away all absolutist notions and refurbish science with modern ideas. In art and literature too, revolutionary change was doing away with old conventions and standards. All things were being made new. Einstein's relativity suited the mood. Nobody got very excited about Einstein's brainy motion, that's another paper, or his photoelectric effect, that's another paper, but relativity promised to turn the world inside out. And it was supposedly the fact that it was supposedly understood by a mere handful of people on the planet was comfort and added a carrot. Catch it. You didn't need to try to understand, and nobody would think you stupid for not knowing. Especially appealing was the fact that Einstein's ideas about space and time used familiar words such as mass and energy, but endowed these words with new and richer meaning. Everyone knew that what these words meant, but sentences such as everything is relative or moving clocks run slow did not by themselves convey useful information. So that's basically the situation. Einstein becomes famous and it's unintelligible. What did he do? And if I go back to my video there, it still remains unanswered what Einstein's relativity is. So on that sense it's still unintelligible. And if we go on to other things, there's been, as I pointed out here, there's been a legacy of dissent with Einstein's relativity. It's been ongoing. People have been still complaining about it being bad. And I've also pointed out in other videos that the mass doesn't seem to make much sense. Where we go. So as pointed out by this article, person's article in this one, he points out what Einstein does seems to be cuckoo. And in this one I'm pointing out that it's a valid conclusion to read Einstein and decide it doesn't make is nonsense. And in this video we've got Professor Roger Wyden talking about his analysis of general relativity and finding it doesn't really make any sense. So it's still nonsense. It came out in Einstein became famous in 1919, and that's when it got more attention. It didn't make much sense then, and it still doesn't make any sense. So that's it. He's omitting John D. Barrow. He's omitting Einstein restored faith in the unintelligibility of science. And it's still ongoing. If we go now to the next one, Michael Fowler is a professor, Department of Physics, University of Virginia, and he's done quite a lot of articles about Einstein's relativity, which is now on the internet. There's quite a lot of things to complain about what he's been saying, but this gets to the issue of why is Einstein unintelligible on this relevant part. Here we go. As you can see from the lecture so far, although Einstein's theory of special relativity solves the problem posed by the Michelson-Morley experiment, the non-existence of an ether is at a price. So I'm not going into details about his previous lectures, you can look at them yourself if you want to, but he's claiming Einstein's relativity solves the problem posed by the Michelson-Morley experiment, and it's the non-existence of the ether is its price. So if we go back to my videos, I point out in this one, it's the lie on which Einstein's relativity is built. And if we go earlier, go to earlier still. We go into the actual maths of which they're using, hiding variable light speed by mass manipulation. It doesn't make sense as to why they've done the maths they have done. It's pointed out in that one. And so we get back to that. So this, right. So when he's claiming it solves the problem posed by the Michelson-Morley, no it doesn't. When you look at the maths of what they've done, it doesn't make sense as to why they've done what they've done. And he also omitted earlier that it's unintelligible by this John D. Barrow. It's just unintelligible. How could something unintelligible make any sort of sense? It doesn't solve any problems, it's unintelligible. Right. The simple assertion that the speed of a flash of light is always seen in any inertial frame leads to consequences that defy common sense. That's correct. But if you go back to my video, it's why they've done the maths that they've done. And it's all based upon a lie anyway. Einstein's relativity is based on a lie. And they've got mathematical nonsense when they're doing it. So, right, let's get back to it. When this was pointed out somewhat forcibly to Einstein, his response was that common sense is the layer of prejudices that put down before the age of 18. So we go back to it again. It's the consequences defy common sense from what he's starting from, and Einstein's response is common sense is the layer of prejudices put down before the age of 18. So he's abandoning common sense. All our intuition about space, time and motion is based on childhood observations of a world in which no objects move at speeds compatible to that of light. Perhaps if we had been raised in a civilization zipping around the universe and spaceships moving at relativistic speeds, Einstein's assertions about space and time would just seem to be common sense. The real question from a scientific point of view is not whether special relativity defies common sense, but whether it can be shown to lead to a contradiction. If that is so, common sense wins. Doesn't make sense there. Ever since the theory was published, people have been writing papers claiming it does lead to contradictions, and that has led to numerous papers being written on Einstein's relativity. It has created a mass industry of people saying Einstein is wrong, and this is generally forgotten about. They don't actually teach when they teach Einstein's relativity, they don't actually go into details that people are saying it's wrong. It's been a long tradition of people saying it's wrong, and there's lots of papers written on that saying it's wrong. And we've got Professor Roger Wyden talk here explaining how he's gone through Einstein's relativity and general relativity, and it doesn't really make any sense. So you've got a theory which is unintelligible and doesn't make sense. So how can you then claim that it doesn't lead to contradiction? Because it does. It leads masses of contradictions. Einstein's assertions about space and time which seem to be common sense. That's if you were living in, say his universe, but obeying his rules, but it doesn't make any sense because we're living in our universe. So you just got total nonsense. So there we are. The conclusions become then emission. It doesn't make sense, and so after arguing with people who believe in Einstein's relativity, many of them claim that Einstein's relativity makes sense to them. But the last hurdle in the argument is, if one argues with them and finally get them to admit that Einstein's relativity is unintelligible, they offer up the last feeble defence, that they will believe in Einstein's relativity precisely because it is unintelligible. And so they're just nonsense. They believe in it because it's nonsense. And so we go back to what John D. Bower was saying. Einstein restored faith in the intelligibility of science, and we've still got that now, because nobody really understands what Einstein's relativity is supposed to be, as pointed out in one of my lectures. All you've got is a mass of confusions. And you've got even things like pointed out by Edward Teller when Einstein's talking about it. Einstein didn't know what he was talking about either. So it's just a mass of mess, all built upon this lie. They built it on a lie, and it's supposed to say you're supposed to believe it even though it's unintelligible. Thank you.